Number, humans warned, don't make us angry. The Galactic Council realized too late. The massive crystalline structure of the Galactic Council chambers floated in the void between three dying stars, its translucent walls reflecting the crimson light of distant suns. Inside, representatives from over 200 species gathered in their designated atmospheric zones, each breathing their preferred gases while debating the fate of the newest addition to galactic civilization. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone in the human section, a small transparent dome filled with oxygen and nitrogen. Around her, creatures of impossible variety whispered in frequencies that would shatter human eardrums, while others communicated through color changes that painted the chamber in shifting rainbows. The weight of representing all of humanity pressed on her shoulders as she watched the proceedings unfold. The species designation, human, presents unique challenges, announced Vextar, the insectoid chairman of the council. His compound eyes glittered like black diamonds as he gestured with forearms toward a holographic display showing Earth. Their planet is a death world by our standards. Extreme temperature variations, violent weather patterns, and gravity that would crush most civilized beings. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Zephyrians, gaseous beings who lived in the upper atmospheres of gas giants, pulsed nervously. Even the mighty Krexthi, whose exoskeletons could withstand most small arms' fire, shifted uncomfortably at the mention of Earth's crushing gravity. Sarah activated her translation device and spoke calmly into the chamber's communication system. Honored representatives, we appreciate your concern for our welfare. However, we must respectfully disagree with the characterization of our homeworld. Earth has provided us with everything we need to thrive. The ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a geometric field, shimmered with what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of laughter. Thrive? Your species has barely achieved interstellar travel. You fight constant wars among yourselves. Your planet's surface is scarred by centuries of conflict and environmental destruction. And yet here we are, Sarah replied, spreading her arms wide. We've crossed the void between stars to stand before you. We've learned to harness the power of atoms, to heal diseases that once decimated our populations, and to explore the deepest oceans and highest peaks of our world. Counselor Thramdok of the Hegelian Republic leaned forward, his scaled hide glistening under the chamber's artificial lighting. But at what cost? Our surveys show your species has an alarming tendency toward aggression. Your history is written in blood, across continents. How can we trust such violent beings with the secrets of galactic civilization? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Sarah felt the eyes of hundreds of beings focusing on her, waiting for her response. She had prepared for this moment for months, studying diplomatic protocols and galactic law. But nothing could have prepared her for the sheer weight of alien scrutiny. Violence is indeed part of our history, she admitted, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. But so is cooperation, innovation, and an unbreakable will to survive. Yes, we've fought wars, but we've also built cities that touch the clouds, created art that moves the soul, and developed technologies that allow us to heal the sick and feed the hungry. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of life support systems. Sarah continued, choosing her words carefully. We understand your concerns about our nature. We know that we seem dangerous to you. Unpredictable, perhaps. But I want to share something that might help you understand us better. She paused, accessing a memory file from her neural implant. There's an old human saying, "The best steel goes through the hottest fire." Our world forged us into what we are today, not despite its harshness, but because of it. Vextar's antennae twitched with interest. Explain this metaphor, Ambassador Chen. Every challenge our world threw at us made us stronger. Ice ages taught us to plan and cooperate across vast time frames. Natural disasters showed us the importance of helping our neighbors. Predators forced us to become clever and resourceful. Even our wars, terrible as they were, eventually led us to understand the value of peace and diplomacy. The Nexian delegate, a fungoid creature whose spores formed words in the air, released a cloud of bioluminescent particles. Yet you still maintain massive military forces. Your ships that brought you here are armed with weapons that could devastate entire moon bases. Sarah nodded solemnly. We do maintain our defenses, but not because we seek conquest. Honored Nexian, we maintain them because we understand that the galaxy is a dangerous place, and that sometimes strength is the only thing that prevents conflict. A new voice echoed through the chamber, mechanical and cold. The Synthetic Collective's representative, a being of living metal and quantum processors, spoke without moving. Your species shows concerning patterns of exponential development. In the span of a single planetary revolution, you have gone from primitive chemical propulsion to quantum tunnel drives. This rate of advancement suggests instability, or adaptability, Sarah countered. We learn quickly because we have to. On our world, the slow learners didn't survive. But more importantly, we share our knowledge freely among ourselves. When one human discovers something beneficial, all humans benefit. Counselor Wheelix of the Peaceful Federation raised a tentacle. But what of your territorial nature? Your tribes still guard their borders jealously. How can we be certain you won't view the galaxy as just another territory to claim? This was the question Sarah had been dreading. Human history was indeed filled with territorial conflicts, and their current political divisions were hardly a secret to the galactic intelligence networks. She took a deep breath before responding. You're right that we have territories and nations. But we also have something else. The ability to look beyond those borders when it truly matters. When our planet faced threats that could destroy all life, we united. When natural disasters struck distant nations, we sent aid without question. When we reached for the stars, it wasn't as separate nations, but as representatives of our entire species. The Luminian representative, a being of crystallized light, pulsed with soft blue radiance. These are pretty words, Ambassador, but what assurance can you give us that humanity won't become another galactic threat? The history of the Destroyer War still haunts our memories. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. The Destroyer War was a sore subject for the entire galaxy. 3,000 years ago, a species called the Void Seekers had nearly wiped out all intelligent life before being stopped by a coalition of the strongest galactic powers. The fear of another such war influenced every decision the Council made. I cannot promise that no human will ever choose the path of evil, Sarah said slowly. Just as you cannot promise that no member of your species will do the same. What I can promise is this. If any human threatens the peace and safety of the galaxy, the rest of humanity will stand against them. Vextar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. You would fight your own species? Without hesitation, Sarah replied firmly. We have done so before when our own people chose the path of tyranny and genocide. We stopped them then, and we would stop them again. This is not a weakness in our character. It is our greatest strength. We police ourselves. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds, as delegates conferred among themselves. Some species communicated through rapid-fire clicking sounds, others through chemical emissions that created visible clouds in their atmospheric zones. The energy beings flickered in complex patterns, while the mechanical delegates exchanged data bursts that appeared as cascades of light. Ambassador Chen waited patiently, knowing that this moment would determine humanity's future in galactic society. They could be welcomed as equals, restricted as potential threats, or worse, marked for elimination before they could become dangerous. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Vextar called for order. The Council will now hear the formal testimony of species that have had direct contact with humanity. The first to speak was Admiral Korth-Ak of the Rigelian Defense Force, a massive reptilian being whose scales were marked with the scars of a dozen campaigns. 6 months ago, pirates attacked our merchant convoy in the Epsilon sector. Our distress signal was answered by a human vessel, the UES Endeavor. Despite being outnumbered 3-1, they engaged the pirates without hesitation. Korth-Ak's massive head turned toward Sarah. But what impressed me most was what happened after the battle. They shared their medical supplies with our wounded, asked for nothing in return, and insisted on escorting our damaged ships to the nearest safe port. These are not the actions of a predatory species. Next came testimony from Dr. Zeleth of the Medical Collective, whose flower-like appearance belied their advanced understanding of xenobiology. Human medical researchers have shared their complete genetic databases with our scientists, holding back nothing. Their understanding of biological systems, forged by millions of years of evolutionary pressure, has already led to breakthrough treatments for 17 previously incurable diseases. The testimonies continued for nearly an hour. Each speaker told of human actions that displayed not aggression or territorial ambition, but curiosity, generosity, and an almost reckless willingness to help others even at personal cost. When the testimonies ended, Vextar stood and spread all four of his arms wide. The Council has heard much today about the species known as humans. We have heard concerns about their violent nature and rapid development. We have also heard testimony about their positive actions and cooperative spirit. Sarah held her breath, knowing that the next words would shape humanity's destiny among the stars. However, Vextar continued, before we can make any final determination about humanity's place in galactic civilization, we must address one more concern that has been brought to our attention. A new holographic display appeared, showing a fleet of sleek, angular vessels bearing no markings or identifying features. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized them from intelligence briefings. 3 weeks ago, a fleet of unknown origin began attacking merchant vessels in the Outer Rim territories. Their technology appears to be a hybrid of known galactic systems, suggesting they may be outcasts or exiles from multiple species. They have ignored all attempts at communication and show no mercy to civilian populations. The display zoomed in on one of the mysterious ships, revealing weapon systems of devastating potential. They call themselves the Purge Fleet, and their stated goal is the elimination of all weak species from the galaxy. They view the Council's peaceful approach as corruption and seek to return the galaxy to what they call the natural order of strength. Sarah's mind raced as she processed this information. A new threat to galactic peace, emerging just as humanity was seeking acceptance into the galactic community. The timing was either incredibly unfortunate or highly suspicious, Counselor Thramdok hissed softly. The Purge Fleet has specifically targeted colonies with new or probationary species. They seem to view expanding membership in the Galactic Council as a threat to their ideology. The implication was clear. By seeking to join galactic civilization, humanity had potentially painted a target on their backs. But more than that, they had potentially brought danger to other species as well. Vextar's compound eyes focused on Sarah. Ambassador Chen, we have decided to offer humanity provisional membership in the Galactic Council, with full rights and privileges. However, given the current threat level, we must ask something of your species. Sarah straightened, sensing the weight of the moment. What do you ask of us, Chairman Vextar? The Purge Fleet has announced their intention to attack Earth itself, viewing humanity as a symbol of the Council's weakness. They believe that by destroying your homeworld, they can demonstrate the futility of peaceful coexistence and fracture our alliance. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the situation became clear. Humanity was being welcomed into galactic society just in time to become the primary target of its greatest threat. We ask that you accept our protection, Vextar continued. Our combined fleets can provide a defensive umbrella around your solar system while we work to locate and eliminate the Purge Fleet threat. Sarah felt a strange calm settle over her as she realized what her response needed to be. She thought of Earth, hanging blue and green in the void, home to 8 billion souls who had fought their way up from the primordial soup to stand among the stars. She thought of humanity's long history of facing impossible odds and somehow finding a way to survive and thrive. Chairman Vextar, honored delegates, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We are grateful for your offer of protection, but I'm afraid I must respectfully decline. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of beings began communicating at once, their various forms of speech creating a symphony of confusion and disbelief. Even Vextar's usually controlled demeanor cracked as his antennae trembled with shock. "Ambassador Chen," he said once order was restored, "perhaps you misunderstood. The Purge fleet possesses weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets. They have already demonstrated their willingness to commit genocide. Surely your species cannot hope to stand against such a threat alone." Sarah smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she felt completely at ease. "Chairman Vextar, I think you misunderstood something fundamental about my species. We didn't come to the stars looking for protection. We came looking for neighbors." She activated her personal communication device, sending a quantum-encrypted signal toward the edge of the system where the human diplomatic escort waited. "You see, the one thing our violent history has taught us is this. The best way to ensure peace is to make war too costly for your enemies to consider." The chamber's primary display suddenly filled with new contacts, as dozens of previously hidden human vessels decloaked around the council station. Sleek destroyers, massive battlecruisers, and ships of designs that no galactic database contained appeared as if from thin air. "We appreciate your offer of protection," Sarah continued as gasps and exclamations echoed through the chamber. "But we've been protecting ourselves for a very long time. What we're offering you is something different. We're offering to help you protect yourselves." Admiral Jennifer Huang's face appeared on the communication display, her uniform bearing the insignia of the United Earth Defense Force. "Council members, this is Admiral Huang of the UES Prometheus. Ambassador Chen, we've been monitoring communications. The Purge fleet has entered the system's outer boundary. Estimated time to engagement: 47 minutes. Vextar's complex jaw structure worked silently for several seconds before he found his voice. "Admiral Huang, surely you don't intend to engage a superior force with only your escort fleet?" Admiral Huang's expression remained perfectly neutral. "With respect, Chairman Vextar, this isn't our escort fleet. This is just the ships we brought in case someone tried to prevent our ambassador from leaving safely." A new display appeared, showing sensor readings from the edge of the system. What had appeared to be empty space was suddenly revealed to contain nearly 1,000 human vessels of various sizes, all holding position just outside the system's gravity well. The Purge fleet numbers approximately 200 ships. Admiral Huang continued matter-of-factly. "Our preliminary assessment suggests this should be sufficient to handle the threat." Counselor Thromdok's scales had flushed deep purple with shock. "You brought 1,000 warships to a diplomatic meeting?" Ambassador Chen shrugged slightly. "We brought 1,000 ships capable of fighting to a meeting where we hope to prevent fighting. There's a difference." The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity, as the Council's own defense forces scrambled to respond to the approaching threat. But their ships were designed primarily for patrol and escort duties, built by species that had known peace for centuries. The approaching Purge fleet, by contrast, was composed of vessels designed by various warrior cultures specifically for destruction. As tactical displays showed the relative positions of the fleets, the scope of the coming battle became clear. The Purge fleet was advancing in a tight formation, clearly confident in their superior firepower and the element of surprise they thought they possessed. "Human fleet, this is Council Defense Command," came a transmission from the station's military controller. "Our analysis indicates the Purge fleet possesses significant technological advantages. Recommend immediate withdrawal to allow Council forces to establish defensive positions." Admiral Huang's response was calm and pro-number the battle unfolds. The human weapons were unlike anything in the galactic databases, where most civilized species had developed refined energy weapons that delivered precise, clean destruction. The humans employed a bewildering array of technologies that seemed designed not just to destroy, but to overwhelm and terrify. Kinetic accelerators hurled projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, creating devastating impact craters in enemy hulls. Plasma cannons superheated sections of enemy ships until their own atmosphere became a weapon against them. Most disturbing of all were the missile systems that seemed to think for themselves, dodging point defense systems and choosing their own targets based on tactical assessments that updated in real time. "How are their weapons systems so diverse?" asked Dr. Zelith, her petal-like sensors extended to gather maximum data from the battle feeds. Most species standardize around 1 or 2 optimal weapon types. Ambassador Chen never took her eyes off the tactical display. Because we never had the luxury of optimal conditions. Every battlefield taught us something new, and we kept all the lessons. The Purge fleet, confident in their opening salvo, had expected to break through human lines and demonstrate their superiority to the Watching Council. Instead, they found themselves fighting shadows. Human ships appeared where sensors said they shouldn't be, disappeared when targeted, and struck back from angles that conventional tactics said were impossible. Captain Vorthan of the Purge Fleet flagship sent a broadcast across all frequencies. Pathetic council weaklings, hiding behind primitive savages. We will cleanse this system of your corruption and restore the natural order. The response came not from the council, but from Admiral Huang. Her voice was steady and calm, carrying no trace of anger or fear. Captain Vorthan, this is Admiral Huang of the United Earth Defense Force. You are ordered to stand down immediately and prepare to be taken into custody for trial under galactic law. Vorthan's laughter echoed across the communication channels. You dare order us? We are the strong. We take what we will and destroy what we cannot take. Your pathetic fleet will be scattered like leaves in a stellar wind. Captain, Admiral Huang replied, with what sounded almost like regret. You were warned. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The Purge fleet, composed of vessels from a dozen warrior cultures, represented the pinnacle of aggressive naval design. Their ships were fast, heavily armored, and equipped with weapons that could reduce planets to slag. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity. The humans fought like no civilized species ever had. Where galactic naval doctrine emphasized formation, integrity, and mutual support, human ships operated with terrifying independence. Each vessel seemed to know exactly what every other ship in the fleet was doing without any observable communication. They moved like a school of fish, each individual responding to threats and opportunities with split-second timing while maintaining perfect coordination with the whole. Impossible, gasped Counselor Thramdok as he watched a human destroyer execute a maneuver that should have torn it apart under its own acceleration. No biological nervous system can process tactical data fast enough to coordinate such movements. Sarah smiled grimly. You're right. But we're not using biological nervous systems for fleet coordination. We're using something else. The truth was that every human ship in the fleet was connected through quantum communication links to a distributed AI network. But this wasn't the cold, logical artificial intelligence that other species had developed. This was something uniquely human. An AI trained on thousands of years of human military history. Every battle ever fought, every mistake ever made, and every victory ever won. The AI didn't think like a computer. It thought like a human commander who had lived through every war in human history and learned from them all. As the battle progressed, the Purge fleet's initial confidence began to erode. Their superior firepower meant nothing if they couldn't hit their targets. Their advanced armor was useless against weapons that struck from impossible angles. Worse, the humans seemed to learn and adapt with each exchange of fire. They're using our own tactics against us, reported Vorthan's tactical officer. Every maneuver we execute, they counter within minutes. It's as if they know our doctrines better than we do. The truth was even more disturbing. The human AI had analyzed the Purge fleet's movements and identified the various species' tactical doctrines within the first few minutes of combat. Drawing on comprehensive databases of galactic military history, it had immediately begun exploiting the weaknesses that each species had developed over centuries of warfare against similar opponents. But the real horror for the Purge fleet was yet to come. 20 minutes into the battle, Admiral Huang opened a channel to the Purge fleet. Captain Vorthan, you have lost 18 ships. We have lost none. I'm offering you one final chance to surrender. Vorthan's response was a renewed barrage of fire directed at the human flagship, the massive Purge fleet dreadnought, a vessel that could have engaged an entire council fleet single-handedly, focused all its weapons on the UES Prometheus. The human flagship didn't dodge. It didn't even raise additional shields. Instead, it simply absorbed the devastating attack, while continuing its steady approach toward the enemy formation. When the energy storm cleared, the Prometheus emerged completely undamaged. Its hull didn't even show scorch marks. Adaptive armor plating, Sarah explained to the stunned council delegates. The hull rebuilds itself using nanoscale repair systems while simultaneously analyzing incoming weapons signatures to develop optimal defense configurations. But that wasn't the end of the display. As the Prometheus continued its approach, sections of its hull began to unfold like a mechanical flower. Hidden weapon systems emerged from concealed bays, transforming the ship from an impressive battlecruiser into something that looked like a mechanical deity of war. Secondary combat configuration, Admiral Huang announced calmly. All ships, you are cleared for unrestricted engagement. What happened next would forever change how the galaxy viewed humanity. The human ships stopped holding back. Weapons that had been firing at reduced power levels suddenly unleashed their full fury. Defensive systems that had been operating within safe parameters shifted into configurations that pushed their technology to theoretical limits. Ships that had been fighting with careful restraint suddenly moved and struck with inhuman precision and devastating effect. In the space of 5 minutes, the Purge fleet went from confident attackers to desperately fleeing survivors. Ships that had dominated battles for decades found themselves outmatched by human vessels half their size. Tactics that had conquered star systems proved useless against an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move before it was made. Impossible! Vorthan screamed across the communication channels. No species develops this quickly. No one adapts this fast. Admiral Huang's response was delivered in the same calm, professional tone she had maintained throughout the battle. Captain, you made a fundamental error. You assumed we were like you. You assumed we were a normal species that had achieved spaceflight through peaceful development and gradual technological advancement. 1. The Prometheus had closed to point-blank range with the Purge fleet flagship, its massive bulk dwarfing even the enemy dreadnought. Every weapon system on both ships was trained on the other, but only one captain was still giving orders. We're not a normal species, Captain. We're a species that clawed its way up from a death world where everything, including our own planet, was trying to kill us. We've been at war for our entire evolutionary history. We've fought our environment, our predators, our diseases, and ourselves for millions of years. Human ships had now surrounded the Purge fleet from all directions. The formation that had seemed so chaotic at the beginning of the battle was revealed to be a perfect trap, designed to funnel the enemy into a killing zone while giving them the illusion of tactical freedom. You came here expecting to fight farmers and philosophers, Admiral Huang continued. Instead, you found the one species in the galaxy that was literally bred for war by the universe itself. Vorthan's ship shuddered as human targeting systems locked onto every critical system simultaneously. Around him, his remaining fleet faced the same situation. Escape was impossible. Continued resistance was futile. Surrender now. Admiral Huang's voice had taken on a harder edge. And you will be treated according to galactic law. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why Earth's predators learned to avoid our ancestors. For a long moment, space was filled only with the hum of active weapons systems and the whisper of solar wind across hull plating. Then, slowly, the Purge fleet powered down their weapons and activated their distress beacons. The battle was over. In the council chambers, silence reigned as delegates processed what they had witnessed. The human fleet had not just defeated a superior force, they had done so while barely taking any damage themselves. It was a display of military capability that redefined the galactic balance of power. By the ancient codes, whispered Counselor Wheelix, his tentacles trembling with shock. In 20 minutes, they defeated a fleet that our combined forces would have struggled against for days. Vex-Tar's compound eyes were fixed on the tactical displays, showing the aftermath of the battle. Human ships were already moving to assist damaged Purge Fleet vessels, providing medical aid to their enemies and preventing unnecessary casualties. The contrast between their ruthless efficiency in combat and their immediate shift to humanitarian assistance was jarring. "Ambassador Chen," he said finally, "your species has just demonstrated capabilities that exceed our most advanced military projections. You could, if you chose, conquer half the galaxy within a standard year." Sarah turned to face the council, her expression serious but not threatening. "Chairman Vextar, honored delegates, what you witnessed here today was not an example of human aggression. It was an example of human restraint." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Restraint? They had just watched the most devastating military display in galactic history. "I don't understand," admitted Dr. Zelith. "How was that restraint?" "Your fleet utterly dominated a force that should have been your equal." Sarah activated a personal holographic display, showing technical specifications that made several delegates recoil in shock. "What you saw was our peacekeeping fleet, designed for operations in civilized space where collateral damage must be minimized and civilian casualties avoided. These ships are built to subdue rather than destroy." The specifications showed weapon systems operating at 23% of maximum output, shielding systems using only backup generators, and propulsion systems limited to 15% of rated capacity to avoid damaging nearby space infrastructure. "If we had deployed our actual military fleet," Sarah continued, "this battle would have lasted 3 minutes instead of 20. If we had used unrestricted rules of engagement, there would be no survivors to take prisoner." She let that sink in before continuing. "But we're not conquerors, honored delegates. We're defenders. We don't fight to take territory or to prove our superiority. We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Vextar's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the implications. "You're saying that humanity possesses military capabilities far beyond what we just witnessed." "What I'm saying," Sarah replied, "is that the deadliest predator on our planet learned to fear us long before we developed tools or agriculture. We've been the apex predator on a death world for so long that we've forgotten how to be prey." She gestured toward the tactical display where human ships were now coordinating rescue operations for both their own damaged vessels and those of the Purge fleet. "But we've also learned something else. We've learned that being the strongest doesn't mean you have to be the cruelest. Power without restraint is just destruction. True strength comes from knowing when not to use your full capabilities." Admiral Huang's image appeared on the communication display. "Council members. Ambassador Chen. We've taken the Purge fleet survivors into custody. Preliminary interrogation indicates they were operating from a hidden base in the Void Nebula. They claim to represent a coalition of exiles from multiple species who believe the galaxy should be ruled by strength alone." Vextar leaned forward. "Admiral, what do you recommend for their disposition?" Admiral Huang's expression remained neutral. "That's not our decision to make, Chairman. They're galactic citizens who violated galactic law. They should be tried by galactic courts and imprisoned in galactic facilities. We'll transfer custody to Council security forces as soon as arrangements can be made." The simple statement carried profound implications. Despite their overwhelming victory, despite their superior capabilities, humanity was voluntarily submitting to galactic authority and law. They weren't claiming the right of conquest or demanding special treatment for their service. Counselor Thramdok's voice carried a note of wonder. "You defeated them completely, yet you claim no spoils of war?" Sarah smiled. "Counselor, we didn't fight this battle to gain anything for ourselves. We fought it to protect our new neighbors and to demonstrate our commitment to galactic peace. But surely your government will expect some form of compensation for the military service you've provided," pressed the Luminian representative. "Our compensation," Sarah replied, "is the knowledge that we've helped preserve a civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. That's worth more to us than any material reward." The council members exchanged glances that spoke of rapid mental recalculations. Everything they thought they knew about species development and military capabilities had been turned upside down in the span of a single battle. More importantly, their understanding of human nature had undergone a fundamental shift. These weren't just another aggressive species that had stumbled into space. They were something entirely new. A species that possessed devastating military capabilities, but chose to use them in service of peace. They were apex predators who had learned to be protectors. Ambassador Chen, Vextar said formally, "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to express our gratitude for humanity's intervention in this crisis. Your actions have prevented untold casualties and preserved the safety of dozens of member species." Sarah bowed slightly. "It was our honor to serve, Chairman Vextar. However," Vextar continued, "your display of military capability raises questions that the Council must address. We need to understand the full scope of human capabilities in order to properly integrate your species into galactic civilization." Sarah nodded, having expected this request. "Of course. We've prepared a full disclosure package covering our defensive capabilities, technological limitations, and strategic doctrines. We believe transparency is essential for building trust." She activated her data transmission system, uploading terabytes of information to the Council's secure servers. Technical specifications, tactical analyses, and strategic assessments flowed into the galactic database, providing the first comprehensive look at human military technology. As Council analysts began reviewing the data, expressions of shock and awe began spreading through the chamber. The information revealed capabilities that bordered on the impossible. Faster-than-light travel systems that operated on principles unknown to galactic science, weapons that could crack planets, and defensive technologies that could withstand the detonation of stars. "This can't be accurate," whispered the Synthetic Collective's representative. "According to these specifications, human technology is centuries ahead of galactic standards. In some areas." Round. Sarah's expression grew serious. "Actually, that data represents our current publicly available technology. Our most advanced systems remain classified for security reasons." The chamber fell silent as the full implications became clear. If the technology they had just reviewed represented only humanity's unclassified capabilities, then their true military potential was beyond calculation. "Why?" asked Dr. Zalith. "Why share this information with us? Surely military secrets are valuable to your species." Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from across the galaxy. "Because secrets breed fear, and fear breeds conflict. We're sharing this inform number. The New Galactic Order, 6 months after the Battle of the Council Station, as historians had begun calling it, the galaxy was a very different place. The news of humanity's military capabilities had spread through every inhabited system, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees alike. The species that had once dismissed humans as primitive savages now spoke their name with a mixture of respect and cautious fear. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the newest council facility, a massive space station orbiting the binary stars of the Centauri system. Through the reinforced transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from dozens of species arriving and departing, their crews now working alongside human technicians and engineers in unprecedented cooperation. "The integration has proceeded faster than anyone predicted," commented Director Vextar as he approached. The former council chairman had been promoted to Director of Galactic Security following the Purge Fleet incident, largely due to his successful management of humanity's integration into galactic society. Sarah turned to greet him, still marveling at how natural it had become to work alongside beings whose biology defied every Earth creature she had ever known. Necessity has a way of accelerating diplomacy. When everyone realizes they need each other, cooperation becomes much easier. The truth was that humanity's revelation of their capabilities had triggered a cascade of changes throughout galactic civilization. Species that had hidden their own advanced technologies for fear of being seen as threats suddenly felt safe to share them. Ancient archives were opened, revealing lost knowledge that had been suppressed for millennia out of concern for galactic stability. The ethereal collective finally agreed to share their dimensional manipulation technology, Vextar noted, his compound eyes tracking a ship that seemed to be folding space around itself as it prepared for faster-than-light travel. They said they were impressed by humanity's willingness to share military secrets, and wanted to reciprocate. Sarah nodded, watching the impossible geometries of the ship's departure. And the Regellians released their temporal research data last week. Admiral Huang says our engineers are having trouble believing some of their discoveries. It had been an unexpected consequence of humanity's transparency. By proving that a powerful species could choose to be open about their capabilities, humans had inadvertently encouraged dozens of other species to reveal technologies they had been hiding for centuries. The result was an explosion of scientific advancement that was reshaping galactic civilization. There's something else, Vextar said, his tone becoming more serious. Our long-range scouts have detected unusual activity in the Magellanic Clouds. Energy signatures that don't match any known technology. Sarah's expression immediately shifted from relaxed observation to focused attention. How unusual. Massive gravitational distortions consistent with artificial structures. Quantum signatures suggesting technology that operates on principles we don't understand. And most concerning, evidence of systematic destruction of multiple star systems. The implications hit Sarah immediately. You think there's another threat out there? Vextar's antennae twitched nervously. I think the Purge fleet may have been running from something, rather than seeking to conquer something. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the peaceful traffic around the station, while contemplating the possibility of a threat that could make the Purge fleet look like a minor annoyance. Finally, Sarah activated her communication implant. Admiral Huang. This is Ambassador Chen. I need you to review some classified intelligence data with Director Vextar and myself. The response came immediately. On my way, Ambassador. Should I bring the full tactical staff? Yes, Sarah replied grimly. And tell them to prepare for a long briefing. An hour later, they were gathered in the station's most secure briefing room. Admiral Huang sat across from Director Vextar, while holographic displays showed the mysterious energy signatures from the Magellanic Clouds. Captain Rodriguez, the station's intelligence chief, had joined them along with Dr. Sarah Kim, humanity's leading expert on xenotechnology. The pattern is consistent with systematic harvesting, Dr. Kim explained, highlighting sections of the data. Whatever is out there, they're dismantling entire solar systems and converting the matter into something else. Admiral Huang leaned forward. Any estimates on time frame? Based on the rate of stellar consumption, they've been active for at least 50 years, Captain Rodriguez replied. But the acceleration pattern suggests they're either growing in number or becoming more efficient. Vextar's four arms gestured at different sections of the display simultaneously. What concerns me most is this quantum signature. Our scientists have never seen anything like it. It suggests technology that operates on dimensional principles we don't understand. There's something else, Dr. Kim added, calling up additional data. The Purge fleet survivors have been cooperative during interrogation. According to them, their coalition was formed after several member species fled something they called the Gray Tide in the outer galaxies. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Gray Tide? Entities that consume everything, Captain Rodriguez read from his intelligence report. According to the prisoners, they don't communicate, they don't negotiate, and they don't leave survivors. They simply arrive, consume all available matter and energy, and move on to the next target. Admiral Huang was quiet for several minutes, studying the data with the intensity that had made her one of humanity's most respected military leaders. Finally, she looked up. How long until they reach galactic civilization? Dr. Kim ran calculations on her holographic interface. At their current rate of expansion, assuming they continue their systematic approach, they could reach the Outer Rim territories within 50 years. That's assuming they maintain their current pace, Vextar added grimly. If they accelerate, the implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Everything they had built, Every alliance they had forged, every species in the galaxy, could be threatened by entities that treated entire solar systems as raw material. What do we know about their military capabilities? Admiral Huang asked. Very little, Captain Rodriguez admitted. The refugees who fled ahead of them were either too traumatized to provide useful tactical data or were destroyed before they could escape. What we do know suggests they're not using any form of technology we understand. Sarah stood and began pacing, a habit she had developed during her years of diplomatic service. So, we're facing an unknown enemy with unknown capabilities, using unknown technology, arriving in unknown numbers at an unknown time. That about sums it up, Admiral Huang replied dryly. Then we need to prepare for the unknown, Sarah decided. Director Vextar, I'm going to request emergency authorization to share humanity's classified military technologies with the Council. All of them. Vextar's compound eyes widened. All of them? Even the dimensional weapons? Sarah nodded grimly. Especially those. If these entities operate on dimensional principles we don't understand, then we need to develop countermeasures based on dimensional principles we do understand. Admiral Huang leaned back in her chair. That's going to require approval from Earth's Security Council. They're not going to be happy about releasing planet-killer technology. They'll be even less happy if there's no planet left to defend, Sarah replied sharply. How long to get approval? 48 hours if we declare a galactic emergency, Admiral Huang calculated. Less if Earth's intelligence services have detected the same threats we have. As it turned out, they had. When Admiral Huang opened a quantum communication link to Earth's Defense Command, she found that humanity's deep space monitoring stations had been tracking the same anomalies for months. Earth's leadership had already begun preparing for the possibility of an existential threat to galactic civilization. The decision has already been made, reported General Chen, Sarah's younger brother and head of Earth's Strategic Defense Initiative. The President signed the emergency disclosure order this morning. We're authorized to share everything with our galactic allies. The next few hours saw the most rapid technology transfer in galactic history. Weapon systems that could destabilize space-time itself. Defensive technologies that operated in 11 dimensions simultaneously, and propulsion systems that could cross galactic distances in hours rather than years, were shared with species that had never imagined such things were possible. But perhaps more importantly, humanity shared something else. Their strategic doctrine for facing unknown threats. The first rule of fighting an unknown enemy, Admiral Huang explained to an assembly of military leaders from across the galaxy, is to assume they're smarter, stronger, and better prepared than you are. The second rule is to make them prove it. She activated a holographic display showing human defensive preparations around Earth. We don't wait for threats to reach us. We go out and find them first. We learn their capabilities, test their responses, and force them to reveal their strategies before they're ready to implement them. The alien commanders listened with fascination as Admiral Huang outlined humanity's approach to asymmetric warfare. While most galactic species had developed military doctrines based on defensive actions and technological superiority, humans had perfected the art of turning any disadvantage into a potential advantage. You're suggesting we attack first? Asked Admiral Korthak, of the Regelian Defense Force. I'm suggesting we gather intelligence first, Admiral Huang clarified. But if the only way to gather that intelligence is through armed reconnaissance, then yes, we attack first. Over the following weeks, a new kind of fleet began taking shape in the shipyards orbiting the galaxy's major industrial worlds. Human technologies were integrated with alien designs to create vessels that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. Regelian temporal manipulation systems were combined with human dimensional weapons. Ethereal phase shift technology was merged with synthetic collective quantum processors. The result was a fleet unlike anything that had ever existed. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, weapons that could strike targets in the past, and defensive systems that operated outside the normal flow of time. But even as these technological marvels took shape, The beings building them knew they were preparing for an enemy they didn't understand with weapons they hadn't tested against unknown defenses. "It's not enough," Sarah admitted during a private meeting with the senior staff. "We're building tools to fight the last war, not the next one." Admiral Huang nodded grimly. "Which is why we need to send out reconnaissance missions. We need to make contact with these entities and learn what we're really facing." The volunteer crews for those missions came from every species in the galaxy. Humans, Rigelians, Ethereals, and dozens of others stepped forward to undertake journeys that might very well be one-way trips into the unknown. They would travel to the edge of the Grey Tide's expansion, attempt to observe and document the entities, and report back with intelligence that could save galactic civilization. Captain Maria Santos, of the UES Pathfinder, was selected to lead the first mission. Her ship, equipped with the most advanced stealth and observation systems available, would approach the outer edge of the consumed zone and attempt to observe the entities in action. "Remember," Admiral Huang told her during the final briefing, "your primary mission is intelligence gathering. Do not engage unless you have no other choice. We need to know what we're dealing with before we start fighting it." Captain Santos nodded. "Understood, Admiral. When should you expect our report?" "If everything goes according to plan, 6 weeks," Admiral Huang replied. "If we don't hear from you in 8 weeks, we'll assume the worst and proceed accordingly." As the Pathfinder and its escort vessels departed for the galactic edge, those left behind could only wait and prepare. The shipyards worked around the clock to build vessels that might be useless against the coming threat. Scientists struggled to understand technologies that operated on principles they had never encountered. Diplomats worked to maintain unity among species that had never faced an existential threat of this magnitude. And in the depths of space, something vast and ancient continued its relentless consumption of everything in its path, drawing ever closer to the galaxy that had only just learned to stand together. 3 weeks into Captain Santos's mission, the galaxy received a transmission that changed everything. It wasn't from the Pathfinder or any of the other reconnaissance vessels. It was a signal of unknown origin, broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't have been able to penetrate galactic space. The message was simple, transmitted in mathematical patterns that any spacefaring civilization would recognize. "We are coming. Prepare." Director Vextar stood in the Council's emergency session, surrounded by representatives from every member species. The chamber that had once echoed with debates about trade routes and territorial disputes now hummed with discussions of survival strategies and last-ditch defenses. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings," he announced, "we have received confirmation that the threat is real and imminent. Long-range sensors have detected massive objects moving through hyperspace toward our galaxy. Estimated time of arrival: 18 months. The chamber erupted in controlled chaos as delegates began communicating with their home governments. Some species immediately began evacuation preparations. Others started stockpiling weapons and resources for extended conflicts. A few simply sat in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the scope of the threat. "There is one more thing," Vextar continued, waiting for order to be restored. Captain Santos and the Pathfinder crew succeeded in their mission. They observed the entities and managed to transmit their findings before being detected. He activated the main display, showing images that defied comprehension. Structures the size of small moons, composed of materials that shifted and flowed like liquid metal, entities that existed partially outside normal space-time, consuming not just matter and energy but the fundamental forces that held reality together. "The Grey Tide is not a species as we understand the term," Vextar explained. "They appear to be artificial constructs, created by an intelligence that operates on principles we don't recognize. They don't seek to conquer or control. They exist only to consume and convert everything they encounter into more of themselves." Ambassador Chen rose from her seat. "Director Vextar, did Captain Santos's team determine if these entities can be reasoned with or negotiated with?" "They tried," Vextar replied grimly. "The entities responded by attempting to consume the Pathfinder. Captain Santos barely escaped, and only because her ship was equipped with human dimensional shifting technology. The implications were clear. This wasn't a war in any traditional sense. It was an extinction event. A threat that would either be stopped completely or consume everything in its path. However, Vextar continued, Captain Santos did discover something that may be crucial. The entities seem to be vulnerable to certain quantum frequencies. Specifically, frequencies that disrupt the dimensional bonds that hold their structure together. Admiral Huang's image appeared on the communication display. Director, we've been analyzing Captain Santos's data. We think we've found a way to weaponize those frequency disruptions. Hope began to stir in the chamber. Explain, Vextar requested. The entities exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Admiral Huang continued. But their connection to our reality is maintained through quantum bridges that operate on specific frequencies. If we can generate enough interference on those frequencies, we might be able to force them back into whatever dimension they originally came from. Dr. Kim's image joined Admiral Huang's on the display. We've already begun constructing prototype resonance generators based on the frequency data. Initial tests suggest they could be effective against the entity's dimensional matrices. How long to build enough generators to defend the galaxy? Asked Counselor Thramdok. That's the challenge, Doctor, Kim admitted. Each generator requires resources from multiple star systems and manufacturing capabilities we don't currently possess. To build enough to protect our entire civilization would take decades. Silence fell over the chamber as the reality of their situation became clear. They had found a weapon that might work against the gray tide, but not enough time to build sufficient quantities to protect everyone. Then we don't protect everyone, Sarah said quietly, breaking the silence. We protect what we can, while we build the weapons we need. She stood and addressed the assembly. We establish fallback positions. Heavily defended systems, equipped with resonance generators, stocked with supplies, and protected by our most advanced fleets. We evacuate as many populations as possible to these strongholds, while continuing to build more weapons. And the systems we can't protect? Asked the Luminian representative. Sarah's expression was grim but determined. We fight delaying actions. We make the entities work for every star system they take. We study their tactics, learn their weaknesses, and buy time for our defensive preparations. Admiral Huang nodded approvingly. It's a sound strategy. We establish fortress systems as bases of operation while conducting a fighting retreat throughout the rest of the galaxy. How many systems can we realistically fortify in 18 months? Vextar asked. Dr. Kim ran calculations on her interface. With our current manufacturing capabilities and available resources, perhaps 50 systems, enough to preserve maybe 10% of galactic civilization. Indesin, 117. End quote. 17. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Billions of beings would be abandoned to face the gray tide alone, while the survivors huddled in fortified systems, hoping their weapons would prove effective. We'll need volunteers, Sarah realized. Species willing to delay the entities while others escape. Ships and crews willing to sacrifice themselves to buy time for evacuation operations. You'll have them, Admiral Korthok stated firmly. The Rigelian fleet stands ready to hold the outer rim as long as possible. Similar declarations came from representatives throughout the chamber. Despite the terrifying odds and the certainty of massive casualties, species that had once viewed each other with suspicion were volunteering to die for strangers. There's something else we need to consider, Admiral Huang added. If our defensive strategy fails, if the resonance generators don't work as expected, we need a contingency plan. What kind of contingency? Vextar asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Exodus protocols, Admiral Huang replied grimly. Ships capable of traveling to other galaxies, carrying genetic samples and cultural archives from every species. If we can't stop the gray tide here, we make sure galactic civilization survives somewhere else. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated the possibility of abandoning their entire galaxy to preserve some remnant of their civilizations. It was a choice no species should ever have to make, but one that circumstances had forced upon them. "Very well," Vextar announced finally. "Emergency protocols are now in effect. All member species are authorized to begin immediate evacuation of non-essential populations to designated fortress systems. Military resources are to be pooled under joint command structure. Scientific teams are to focus entirely on resonance generator production and deployment." He paused, looking around the chamber at beings from across the galaxy who had come together in the face of unprecedented crisis. "And may whatever gods each of us pray to have mercy on our souls," he concluded, "because nothing else will." As the assembly dispersed to begin preparations for the greatest challenge in galactic history, Ambassador Sarah Chen remained behind, staring out at the stars that might soon become battlefields. Beside her, Admiral Huang's holographic image flickered with quantum interference. "Sarah," her old friend said quietly, "do you really think we can win this?" Quote, Sarah was quiet for a long moment before answering. "I think we can try. And sometimes, that's enough. The gray tide has never faced anything like us," she continued. "They've consumed civilizations, but they've never fought a civilization that was willing to sacrifice everything to protect others. They've faced individual species, but never an alliance of hundreds of species working together." She turned away from the window. "They may be older than us, more advanced than us, and stronger than us, but they've never been human. And we've been fighting impossible odds since we first stood upright on the African savanna." Admiral Huang smiled grimly. "Then let's show them what humans do when someone threatens their friends." 18 months later, as massive shapes began emerging from hyperspace at the galaxy's edge, they found not scattered, terrified civilizations ripe for consumption, but a united force unlike anything they had encountered in their eons of existence. The gray tide had come expecting to feed. Instead, they found a galaxy that had learned to bite back. "Asian, because we want you to understand that we're not a threat to you. We're powerful enough to be a threat to anyone, which means we can choose not to be a threat to anyone." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "In our history, the greatest wars were fought not because of incompatible goals, but because of misunderstandings. We want to make sure that never happens between humanity and the galactic community." Vextar was silent for a long moment before speaking. "Ambassador Chen, the Council has a decision to make. Based on what we've witnessed and learned today, humanity could be granted full membership with complete access to galactic technology and knowledge. However," he continued, "such membership comes with responsibilities. Member species are expected to contribute to galactic defense, to share in the burden of maintaining peace, and to assist other species in times of crisis." Sarah straightened. "Chairman Vextar, I can say without reservation that humanity accepts those responsibilities. We've been protecting ourselves for so long that we've almost forgotten what it's like to have allies. We look forward to protecting others as well. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, a species was granted full membership based not on their need for protection, but on their ability to provide it. Professional. Council Defense Command. This is Admiral Huang. Negative on the withdrawal. We have the situation under control. Recommend Council forces maintain position and observe." Sarah watched the displays with growing fascination as the human fleet began to move. Instead of the tight formations favored by most galactic navies, the human ships spread out in what appeared to be a chaotic pattern, with individual vessels following seemingly random courses. "Fascinating," murmured the synthetic collective's representative. "Their tactical arrangement appears to violate several fundamental principles of fleet engagement theory." "Maybe that's the point," Sarah replied quietly. The first shots of the battle were fired by the Purge fleet as they entered extreme weapons range. Brilliant beams of coherent energy lanced across the void toward the dispersed human vessels, but seemed to find only empty space as the human ships danced between the attacks with impossible grace. Then, the humans returned fire, and the nature of the battle changed completely.